Welcome back to Emotional Runway, the Entrepreneur's Guide to Mental Health. I'm your host, Matt Sloan, and today I am here with my fabulous co-host, Krista. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
And today we are very lucky to have Jennifer Strother, who is a certified functional nutrition specialist and founder of ThriveWell, joining us. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us as well.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
So you've had a chance to check out the podcast, and the goal here with what we do is to just try and get help for entrepreneurs who are struggling with various things, obviously mental health being the primary focus of it. But you focus on the mental health in connection with physical health. I'm obviously oversimplifying it here, but tell me exactly what functional medicine is and what is it that you do?
Thank you. So yes, mental health is a huge part, but we have to look at what is causing our mood disturbances, what's causing our mental health, what's causing our anxiety, and I bring in the food and nutrition part. I can oversimplify it as well and just simply say I focus on nutrition because the one thing that we have to do every day is to eat. Everybody's got to think of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. A lot of our society revolves around food and what our next meal is. And if it's not right, it's going to affect our mood. It's going to affect our ability to thrive. That's why my business is ThriveWell Solutions. It's just to find those solutions to help us live that vibrant life and be our best, even in entrepreneurship. And it's the hardest with those of us that are running, we wear multiple hats, carry multiple titles, and just live a very fast-paced life.
So the one thing that I found interesting immediately off the top was it is how your nutrition is affecting your mental health versus how your mental health is affecting your nutrition. How do you approach that? I mean, is it's a chicken and egg scenario, or is it clearly one direction?
It's a circle. It's completely going. It's our mental health affects our nutrition, and our nutrition affects our mental health. So we have to look at it from both aspects. A lot of times, if we're under fight or flight responses with mental health, the anxiety, the depression, it shuts down our gut. It shuts down the ability for our body to absorb nutrition. That's one thing that I focus on a lot is absorption. A lot of times people come to me and they've been taking thyroid medication for 10 years and they're still having thyroid problems. I'm like, ooh, wow, then there's a problem. We're not absorbing. I also have teenagers come to me earlier and earlier ages saying that they can take a bottle of Tylenol, a bottle of Advil, and it doesn't help their pain. Well, then there's an absorption issue because those medications are brought into our society to work. If they're not working, then we need to look at something a little bit deeper and continue to ask those questions of why.
So I like that approach. So it sounds like there's more of a focus on what the root causes are or the underlying issues in that condition. Can you talk a little bit about how that differs from kind of a traditional medicine approach, Western medicine approach?
Absolutely. Going traditionally with medicine and the Western medicine approach, a lot of times we are symptom focused, coming in and saying, okay, how can we resolve this symptom, this one symptom? It's not looking at the whole body approach, and it's not getting to the root cause. So for instance, even cancer, which was part of my story personally, but even looking at cancer, you can come in and treat it with chemotherapy all day long. And is it great that we have those medications? Absolutely. But is it getting down to what caused your cancer? What were those triggers? What were the cellular imbalances? Absolutely not. So having a combination approach, and that's something that I find very stifling in our community right now, is if someone wants to be one way only focused, it doesn't work. But to have this holistic approach of being able to utilize Western medicine when it makes sense, and also functional medicine to an extent to where it can boost the ability of those medications to work. And then also not overconsume medications, because as we know in Western medicine, a individualized approach also has extreme side effects. So I know I recently went to the doctor and luckily had my daughter and I, she was 13 at the time, were out shopping when they called and said, hey, we have a cancellation. Do you want to come in? So I took the opportunity and went in, and they listed off some medications that I could start with when they had no idea what was going on. And the doctor continued to list off the side effects. And when we walked out the door, she looked at me and she goes, "Mom, why would you ever do that?" Mm-hmm. And it was such a good experience and a good time to have her with me, because rather than her being focused on her being under pain, she was sitting there just as a bystander. And sometimes if we take off the pain and the pain away from ourselves, the depression away from ourselves, the anxiety of the current issue, and look at it broad perspective like that, then we can sit there and say, why would we ever do this?
Well, and I think too, I mean, I come from a family of doctors, and so they're very traditional Western medicine. You know, even when I told them I was going to a chiropractor, they thought I was nuts. But like, so why do you think there is so much resistance to this alternative, you know, option besides take a bunch of medicine and come to the doctor once a week? Like, why is there so much resistance to, I mean, it's not like you're not asking somebody to like go get, you know, energy healing or anything like that, which I'm sure works as well too. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying it's a little bit further fetched.
Easy.
No, it's just a little bit further out there than like, hey, let's look at the root cause of this. Yeah. You know, why is there so much resistance to that, do you think?
Yeah, so that question comes up a lot.
Yeah.
And I went to nursing school, so I've, you know, definitely, I come from a family of Western medicine as well. My mother was a nurse, went all the way up through administration. And, you know, they don't have the time. The time that you can spend with a client is so limited. So you go in, you're with a doctor 15, 20 minutes max. Honestly, one of our dermatologists that we use, we've used them for some, you know, some warts, some skin issues. It's amazing to me how much time that individual doctor will come in and spend. But you also have a long wait in the waiting room. So it's turnover. It's the time they can spend with you. Are they going to be able to follow up with you the next night and say, hey, how did you sleep? Are there any side effects to that medication? No. It is an individualized responsibility. And a lot of times as the individual, we're not educated enough to go in and know to ask the questions. Like, for instance, I have a client and she took a medication. She's like, I'm so dizzy. I'm like, how long would you honestly continue that before you started to question whether that medication was, you know, absorbing or metabolizing in your body appropriately? And then, like I mentioned, the client who's on thyroid medication for 10 years, they don't understand what that's doing to their liver. So we're not looking at just whether or not we're treating the symptom that we went to the doctor for. In functional medicine, we're also looking at what side effects are happening to the liver, to the gallbladder, to the pancreas. I mean, metabolic disturbance right now is enormous in our society. I mean, we're hearing it over and over and over, whether you're hearing insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, metabolic disturbance, that whole catchphrase. The damage that's been done to the pancreas through a lot of these medications and the side effects without asking why are these symptoms happening.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, I mean, you just think that you go to the doctor and the doctor says this is the medication you take, and you're like, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing, and that's what I do for the rest of my life now.
And that's appealing when you're in this, right, instant gratification culture, fast pace. You know, think about it. That functional medicine route sounds like you're taking a lot of, it's an investment in yourself. You're taking time to meet with a specialist to really understand like the whole body system approach. That's going to take time to assess and understand. And my understanding, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, you're also focusing on aspects of physical well-being. Like, are you sleeping well? Are you exercising? You know, in addition to the nutrition and then the kind of like stress and emotional well-being piece. Like, all of that does factor in, and you're not going to be able to effectively do that in one session.
No, absolutely not.
Whereas, let's say, you know, an example, I mean, right, going to the doctor, there's a lot of strep going around right now, you know, and just, you know, you have 24 hours on antibiotics, and then you can return to school or work. That works for our modern life, right? And so I think you know, could you talk a little bit about that? Like, about what the experience is for someone who is seeking your services? Like, what does that process look like?
Yes. I love talking about that because it is, like you mentioned, sleep. But when you're sleeping, are you actually restoring? You know, so it's never looking at it from a narrow lens. And then a lot of times our culture is so focused on diet and exercise. The word diet, oh my gosh, if we could just throw it out the window and say,
I like her.
yeah, just throw it out. But honestly, when we're looking at diet, are you focused on nutrition and absorption? And then when you're focusing on exercise, okay, how many times have you gone to the doctor and they're like, can you just lose 10 pounds? And then you get so stressed over this whole diet and exercise mentality.
Restrictive, too.
And it's very restrictive. And the stress that you're putting on yourself is actually causing further damage. So we have to look at really sleep as restoration. Diet, no. We have to look at nutrition and absorption. As far as exercise, we have to look at what movement is appropriate for you. And in doing so, we have to analyze the lifestyle. Lifestyle comes into that. And then mental health, okay? If you're a very high-strung person, then you're going to be attracted to running, to CrossFit, to all these HIIT exercises. But if you're a high-strung person, your adrenals are already exhausted. Your cortisol is already high. This is causing the stress response on your nervous system.
Inflammation.
The nervous system, the vagal nerve, it's affecting your mental health. Now, on the flip side of that, being able to go to a instructor-ran type exercise class, if as an entrepreneur, you can take your mind off of what you need to do next. And you have someone coaching you. And that's where, someone in a coaching establishment, such as Krista, you're coaching with mental health, or myself with nutrition, or a coach with exercise. Sometimes it's just allowing yourself to relax and breathe and someone else be in control. So and I say that definitely from a personal experience, I love classes because someone else is in control of my 45 minutes. The other 23 hours of my day, I feel like I am in control. And I have to focus on kids, work, my business, the whole realm of it. So if someone else can be responsible for 45 minutes of my day, that's relaxing. But we have to look at that from a lifestyle perspective. Some people are so chill, they need that.
Well, and I think the problem, my particular problem, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, is that, there's just so much noise out there, right? And about it's like this diet and this way of living, and you're going to go keto and you're going to do CrossFit, and you're like, oh my God, my head's going to explode. I don't even know where to start. And I mean, Krista and I have talked about this. I was a medical journalist for 14 years. I covered diet and exercise and obesity and all that. And I still feel like I have no idea what to do because every 5 minutes the guidance changes. And so that idea is so appealing to me, to come to somebody like you and say, I already know, I know there's a problem. I know too many solutions. Please guide me. And I think that's what so many people need in these situations.
And reminding everyone, for anything in your life, nothing is going to be a quick fix.
Right.
No.
What is going to be lasting is never going to be a quick fix. And Jennifer and I talked a little bit about this the other night. It's the people who are successful from a well-being standpoint are people that establish the practice of. It's not rudimentary, where you just do it a couple times and then you're done. It's really establishing a practice. And that's for your services too, is kind of right. You talk to people about the importance of being consistent.
Yeah, that is one element of my service. And, like I mentioned with sleep and restoration, it's not just mindset, but it's mindset and habitual habits. What are your habits? And can we put this mindset and this change into practice long enough that it is a habit?
So are you actually helping people establish a sleep schedule?
Yes.
For example, a morning routine, I think is always really important.
Yes, and what you need to do the first 30 minutes that you're awake versus the last 30 minutes that you're awake, and looking at the importance of that. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, we're on our screens all the time. And so it's basically, if you need to be on your phone all the time, what else can you do? Bring in blue light therapy, and being able to tell your body it is time to start making melatonin. I mean, it is actually a circadian rhythm cycle that we have to tell our bodies, okay, it is time to start making melatonin, and we're going to prepare ourselves for sleep. Then, if you don't do that, you go to bed and you're laying there and you're tossing and you're turning, you're so mad at yourself. And you're like, why is my body not falling asleep? Well, it's all because of what you you did. Did you really set up your body and prepare your body for that practice?
There's a pill for that. It's cool.
and that's a hormone though. We've got to allow our bodies to have its own jumpstart its own processes.
What, just out of curiosity, what brought you to the practice of functional medicine? What made you decide to want to do this?
Oh, I could, it's a long story, but I'll kind of consolidate it shortly. So I grew up really being taught functional medicine, but we didn't call it that. So at the age of 4.5, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and she was a nurse. She had a ton of knowledge in the health space. But she was also the first one to take all margarine, all hot dogs, all sweet tea. I mean, growing up in the South with no sweet tea was...
You're an outcast.
Yeah. So I grew up as an outcast. We had no sodas in our house. My stocking was never full of candy. So this whole thought process of, okay, we're going to remove things from our diet in order to facilitate. Her goal was to see me graduate from high school. Okay, so I'm like, here I am, 4.5, and she wants to live 12 more years. Yeah. And she did. I mean, let's just face it. She fought for 35 years, but not heavy. And so, she also chose what medicine she was going to take. She, go to the oncologist. Here's 9 medications we recommend. She would lay them out in order of priority and kind of say, okay, I'm going to take these first 3, and I can bring in some natural medications to facilitate the other 7, 6 or 7. So she did a lot of other things for nausea control because she knew that bringing in that additional medication could have, additional effects on her body. And I don't say this. I mean, here it sounds positive. That I looked at it as a positive when I was a child. I absolutely did not. So this comes into some of the anxiety that Krista, here I was a mental health case. I was very nervous growing up that we were told several times she had 6 months to live, and she would sit there and be like, "Oh hell no." But I grew up nervous, and in that situation, and we just never understand what the past prepares for us. My brother was also diagnosed type 2 diabetes after some of his 20s and heavy drinking ages. So I saw that happen, and I was like, oh, wow, there's really a cause and effect here. So maybe you're predisposed, okay? Maybe your family has this, but
Sure.
Diabetes was not in our family. So I looked at him and I was like, you totally did that to yourself. And then I will say the thing that got me to really launch into this business is my youngest. He is 10. And he was born with a lot of undiagnosed allergies. They're gut allergies. They are not superficial. So when you go to the allergist and have allergy testing done, nothing showed up. Some of the allergies do present themselves in our vaccinations. Not sitting here as an anti-vax at all. Yeah. But I will say he had some allergic reactions to some shots. And it just kept rearing its ugly head to the point that he was extremely ill. And we went through a lot of hell to get where we are today. We were on the aerodigestive team down in Birmingham, and we sought a ton of Western medicine. So believe me, I'm right there on board of, we've got to do what's best at the right time. But we went from being down there at Children's Hospital for about two years, really heavy. They transferred us to Atlanta. They transferred us to Chicago. And I was sitting in the waiting room with a lady in Chicago, and she just looked over at me and she said, I think your son has a buildup of glyphosate in his small intestines. And I went, what? And she goes, he has Roundup and a buildup in his small intestines. Just in the right time of her saying that, I was like, I need to go look elsewhere. I need to look deeper. I need to dig deeper. I have this inside of me, this fight mentality inside of me that I just don't give up. So we started digging, and yes, his GI system was so wrecked and so inflamed. He had then been diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, where your bone marrow is actually overreacting to mast cells. It's producing too many mast cells and histamine. Huge production issue going on in his system. and it's all under control now. Like, it's just been it was a long journey, but it's been beautiful. I found out a ton of, we did some genetic testing, found out a ton about my family, my children, and then I honestly just don't want to see other parents and people go through that. It created a fire in me to where I'm like, if I can help one person's journey look different, then let's go for it.
That's a pretty powerful reason to be doing what you're doing, and I think that's awesome because that's a testament to how much this type of work can help and how much of a difference you can make without taking 4,000 medications and even when you did and you were in at various hospitals around the country, it wasn't doing anything. So
nothing.
Yeah, no, that's pretty powerful. So what do you think? We like to try and be very practical with people about I'm struggling. Where do they start? What are some of the initial things that you counsel people? Hey, take a look at this. Take a look at that. Is it your morning routine? Like, don't pick your phone up the second you open your eyeball. I mean, what are some of those practical things that you think are kind of universal?
Yeah. So start small. And this is the other thing I really like about functional medicine is, when we were talking about diet and exercise earlier, just losing 10 pounds can seem so daunting. Mm-hmm. But if we're looking at lifestyle, sleep, habits, what I like to tell people is we're going to make one small change every single day to give you a small win to keep you motivated to move forward. I mean, because if you're like, let's set a goal of 50 pounds of losing weight. Oh my God, that can just sound so detrimental to some. But, so for sleep, for instance, if you're a night owl and going to bed at midnight, let's move that up 15 minutes. All right. Going to bed at 11:45 tonight can actually be a win. Be proud of yourself. Show yourself that you can do something to change. Even bringing in your diet, we can look at. I like to have a heavy focus on protein. If we focus on protein and we're not focused on carb reduction and calorie counting and all this, it's like if we can just have a simple focus and get that one individual win to keep us moving forward.
Why is focusing on protein so important?
So protein, oh gosh, there's so many reasons. But when we look at functional medicine and nutrition and actually being able to thrive and sustain our energy levels throughout the day, is it keeps blood sugar balanced and it really stabilizes our mood. Blood sugar balancing is so important. One of the things that can be oversimplified, but also give you that small win that I was talking about. It can help our mood, our hormones, our vagus system, our mental health. So having a focus on the protein and then also on healthy fats to sustain and allow that energy to burn at a slower rate. Our standard American diet is so heavy in simple carbohydrates, so it's that fast energy burn that, it's just doing so much damage to the American population.
I've seen you provide some of those protein, high fat, I guess, like natural fat snacks, I would say, like to your family on the soccer field because our kids play soccer together. What are some examples that our audience can take away as ideas to kind of grab and go rather than like a bag of chips?
Yes. So what you probably see me do a lot on the soccer field is just simply sliced apples with a nut butter. Our nut butter of choice is almond butter, but that works very well for our family. So any type of high protein, it's going to have nut butter. It's going to have fat in it. It's also going to have that protein source, and then bringing in an apple or even a banana and spreading that nut butter on the banana is also going to bring in the carbs. I'm definitely not saying we don't need carbs, but there actually has to be a balance so we can have blood sugar stabilization.
Again, I've always learned that fat along with the carbs helps the absorption, so it doesn't spike your blood sugar as much.
Yes, the insulin levels can stay regulated.
So I'm curious, like when somebody comes to you, is like everybody that comes into your office exasperated with the traditional health system, or like what does a typical patient come in and say, like, I give up, I've been sick for years, I need help? Or do people proactively take this approach more often than not?
It's encouraging because I'm seeing more. of a proactive approach. Especially in our parents with children, I have had such a joy working with families. Now, I will tell you, there's usually someone in the family that's exacerbated.
Yeah.
You know, they've gone to the doctor, they've had all the tests run, they've been told everything looks good, but they still don't feel good. I mean, that was my story, I'll be honest with you. You know, after women have children, estrogen levels and hormone levels are crazy. I mean, our bodies just don't regulate very well, especially after the second child. And I was going in all the time. I'm extremely fatigued. I was trying to take care of a sick baby. I needed energy, and all my labs looked good. And honestly, it wasn't until Claire's 14 now. She was probably 10. She was diagnosed as a pre-diabetic at 10. And again, the PTSD from my mother's illness and constantly looking at sickness. When she was diagnosed as a pre-diabetic, I thought about my brother. And I will tell you, my brother's no longer with us. The pre-diabetic, some mental health issues. So the PTSD came back quickly, and I'm like, why? Does she have is she going down this path of my brother with this prediabetes? And I immediately thought, no, like, she's a fainter. She's one that's weak. Her blood sugar is low. So I appeased the doctor, took the glucose monitor test for 2 weeks. I never got her blood sugar over 98 until I gave her a Panera bread bowl with soup in it, and we got it to like 120. So what was causing that was a very low cortisol level. Low cortisol levels can give you a false high A1C, which also shed a lot of light on why I did not survive as a nurse. I would go to...
Your cortisol was way too high.
And it would drop. Yeah. I mean, so we talk about the vagus and the stress response. I would go to give an IV and I would faint. And, so that path did not look very well for me. But in looking at this with my daughter and the cortisol response, we're actually seeing that a lot with families. And I love working with families is there's a history, and our parents today don't want the kids to go down the path that they are going down. Yeah. There is an epidemic right now of diabetes, of autoimmune conditions, insulin resistance. I mean, they're saying like 50% of our society right now has some type of chronic illness that can be reversed by diet, lifestyle, basically functional medicine practices. So you make a change, you're going to see positive, outcome. But I mean, a lot of our society is looking, they've gone down the road. They are just exhausted with not getting answers.
All right, I have to ask this question. What's your thought on all these new weight loss drugs, Wegovy and Ozempic, and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon? What do you think?
I'd love to hear what they have to say in a year. It's really scary. I mentioned the pancreas earlier, and it is definitely the body system, the organ that I think is, not an organ, but it's definitely like we have to look at all body systems. And it's the body system that I think is ignored greatly. I mean, the liver, I could go days and days, but honestly, we've gotten so much attention with the liver because of fatty liver and, all these liver enzymes are elevated. So there's been a lot of attention there, but you still don't hear anything about the pancreas. And these medications are directly affecting the pancreas. And, and I've read a lot about pancreatic cancer. I mean, and it's not an easy one to reverse. It's not an easy one to treat. And it's very scary that these people are taking that chance.
Yeah. No, it's frightening, but I hear about it, and the medical journalist in me, even though I retired, quote unquote, 10 years ago, I'm still like, there's something more to this story, and I don't know what it is yet, but it's going to come out for sure. So I think it's stuff like that still fascinates me, just to kind of to hear your thoughts on that. So
it's frustrating though, because I'll tell you from my perspective, like insurance does not fund a lot of, it doesn't fund my services. So when we're looking from a financial standpoint, you see how much people are willing to put in a quick fix. And insurance may pay for it short term, but once they say that they've got your body under control, they're going to stop paying for it. And I've also read that it's, $1,200 to $1,500 a month to continue this type of quick fix. And that's more than my services. Yeah. Let's just get the problem fixed to begin with. It may not be as fast of a fix, but, earlier we were talking about the simple small wins. My clients see fast results. I mean, there's typically my client comes back and they're like, I didn't expect to feel this good so fast. Yeah. I mean, within 2 weeks. So there are small wins that keep you motivated.
Well, and I think it's just emblematic of everything in our society right now, which is we want a pill, we want something quick, we want it fast. We don't want to have to think about it. We don't, everybody's too busy and all that kind of stuff. And that's so much of what we talk about on this podcast is taking a breath, slowing down, taking a step back from the craziness that is being an entrepreneur. And I think that applies in this area as well too. Don't you think?
Yeah. I think the other thing that comes to mind for me is in taking small steps. Traditional Western medicine practice, that may be right for you at that time, just like you mentioned, with, your children. But encouraging people always to do your research, that your body is a system, and if you choose to go that route and take a medication, that's okay. But understand that there's other kind of components here that are going to be affected, and just do your research, reach out and contact someone like Jennifer to understand maybe like what further is going on. But yeah, I think it's definitely I love the, again, holistic approach to well-being. If there's one thing I hope everyone listening puts to mind is, how do I facilitate well-being by thinking about my mind, my body, and my spirit? Mm-hmm. It's got to be all of it.
It is. It's so important. And Matt, you talked about, the quick fix, and as entrepreneurs, we're constantly, on our phones. We've got instant gratification at our fingertips. And, and even Dr. Google, okay. I mean, you can find lovers and haters, but there's instant gratification because you can go online and you can find information. But as people, as entrepreneurs, that is also part of the stress. It's part of the stress of thinking we have to have instant gratification. So it's so important to take that step back and honestly take a deep breath. Research is part of it, but this is such an individualized plan. When I started my practice, I was like, let's make some SOPs. Let's, create some standard processes. 2.5, 3 years into seeing private individual clients, there's not been one repetitive scenario. Mm-hmm. Everybody's created so different and so individual. So I encourage my clients, the first consult's always free. And in that conversation, I'm like, walk away from this and take a deep breath and just envision yourself, close your eyes, whether you call it meditation or looking into the future, close your eyes and envision yourself 6 months from now. Where do you want to be? Mm-hmm. And it's not what your friend wants to be. It's not what your friend wants you to be. Nobody's here to judge your path and your experience. Same thing in entrepreneurship, mm-hmm. right? Your business is your business. Your body is your body. It's your vessel. And it needs to look beautiful to you. And the journey's got to look beautiful to you. And if this journey does not look beautiful, then I respect that 100%. I've had those phone conversations, walk away, and it's maybe 6 months before I hear back from someone. But typically they still come back even more frustrated that they didn't start 6 months ago.
Yeah. Well, and I think we tend to be a breed of people as entrepreneurs who, we feel like we have to fight through everything, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's okay to just get help. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what all this is about, is to say, look, just take advice from somebody, mm-hmm. go in, let loose for a few minutes, go to a class where an instructor can just tell you what to do for 45 minutes. That actually, when you put it that way, that sounds so appealing to me. Like, I don't have to think. I don't have to figure out where I'm walking. I don't have to figure out what exercise I'm doing. Just do what that person tells me to do. So I think that's so important to just kind of almost submit yourself to the process. But again, we're usually control freaks. So we're not usually great at that. So
well,
We're
you
control. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say we're control freaks, but also the ADD individual makes the best entrepreneur, right? Yeah. I mean, so the majority
cannot relate.
Most entrepreneurs, let me just say, there's a high statistic of entrepreneurs that are ADD.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly bouncing from one thing to the next, and let's do this and let's do that. And, oh, this is so exciting. I mean, classic, right? I'm sitting here as an entrepreneur because I knew the 8-to-5 job would bore the heck out of me, right? Like, I could not just do this my entire life. I got into my first job and I thought, no way, there's no way I'm doing this the rest of my life. I've got to be very hyper-stimulated, in a way. So when you look at that and first of all, own it, okay? Own it. ADD is not necessarily a negative, and that's what I want to tell all my clients. Whatever you are dealing with, even the path that I went down with my mom now, the path that I've gone down with my son now, look where it's brought me. So having ADD, yes, we need to own it. We need to understand how to control it, but also how to maximize it.
Yeah. It is a personality trait. I don't see it as a disorder. No. I mean, it's helped me as an entrepreneur. It's helped me. It's helped me as a journalist because there was always a million things going on at once. And so, I just see it as a personality trait. Now, my son drives me crazy with his, he's bouncing all over the walls, but I know it'll be good someday to have that personality trait.
If you can channel it.
If you can channel it, right.
And as he gets older,
we're struggling with that. We'll get there. We'll get there.
So flip the table, though. Okay, so we know we have this amazing personality trait that's helping us in business, but that same personality trait can really do some damage when it comes to health and nutrition. Because we're constantly looking for the next stimulant, the next stress ball, that stressful path. And if we can own that, but then it cause us to make us sit back and take a deep breath, even let that oxygen go down into our diaphragm so we can take a long breath. And just stop breathing superficially. This is one thing with mental health. Like, we breathe to survive. I mean, we are breathing to survive these days. Very seldom do we slow down long enough and actually take that air and that oxygen in to service our cellular level. I mean, and the cellular level of your body is really where healing is going to take place.
No, it's fascinating. So this all sounds amazing. I want to sign up. How does everybody else sign up? How do you take that step into functional medicine? I mean, whether it's with your services or anybody else's. I mean, what is the next step? Somebody, if they're interested in what they're hearing, how do they get started?
Yeah, like I mentioned, the first consult's always free, and the reason is sometimes there is education just in what is functional medicine and how can these services help you. ThriveWellSolutions.com. There's the website there. We're all over social media. I'm a lover and a hater of social media, but it's really a great place for education, for some support groups. And I do have a support group on Facebook that is absolutely free. So people can come, sit, meditate, listen, learn, whatever they need to do to really lean into the experience and see what the next steps are for them.
So Jennifer, you're available for potential clients who don't live in this area, correct? Do you provide services across the country, across maybe the world?
Yeah, across the United States and Canada.
Okay.
So one part of my services does include some functional lab testing, and we haven't really talked about that. So that does cause some limitation, but yes, I mean, being really across the United States and Canada has been amazing. So all the services are virtual. The good thing about COVID, right, is we all learned how to do things, virtually. There's, and we still develop that relationship. That's one thing I have not seen. I mean, I still get so super close to my clients that I've never met face to face. I miss them. We stay in contact after the services are over. But yes, it is all across the United States.
Do you have a professional body that kind of validates, I guess, professionals in this line of work that are legitimate, have been trained and maybe licensed, for example, like we do with social work, I'll say.
Yes.
That people can reference if they're looking to find someone who practices functional medicine.
That varies state by state.
Okay.
The state rules on who can and can't practice nutrition does vary state by state. Alabama is actually very restrictive. Some of the other states are less restrictive. New Jersey, New York, even more restrictive as far as, especially on lab testing. I think we'd mentioned this before the podcast began as well. But so, one reason I do the lab testing is to let your body tell the story. And that's part of what I love about our practice is, and it's one of the reasons I went into functional nutrition rather than dietetics or any other avenue, is the functional testing that gives our body the evidence as what's causing internal triggers and inflammatory responses is so important to learning the key. But also in functional medicine, there's so many lab tests, and I'm not the one to get hung up on it or overcharge or overrun. I have two primary lab tests that I do. One is a food sensitivity test that does, disclose some of the triggers and inflammatory responses, and then I do a lot of hormone testing. But included in hormone is adrenal and cortisol. I mentioned that earlier. The stress response is so important. I cannot. But a lot of times people only focus on, my hormones are off or my testosterone is off, and testosterone in men and women, because it's a huge contributor even to PCOS. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at, but what are the underlying causes? And blood sugar and cortisol and adrenals are typically even more so at the root of those hormonal imbalances. So I went in and got certified, board certified, Krista, just so I could run those tests, order the test, and then also be able to deliver those to the clients with recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah. And one thing I want to add with functional medicine and moving forward as a client and someone with that is, a lot of times people get hung up on supplementation. We talked a little bit about our standard American diet. I will tell you, I grew up thinking I am not taking all those vitamins. And really some of the mental and mindset that went around that is I saw a lot of people taking vitamins that were eating Big Macs. And
not going to help.
And so, my favorite phrase is you cannot out-supplement nutrition. But on the flip side of that, our nutrition today, our vitamins A, B, C, D, E, our folate, our potassium, our magnesium are anywhere between 30 to 50% less than what it was in the 70s. So if we look at, my parents had a 50% greater good of raising me than I have my children. Look at it that way, and you can kind of get this, as entrepreneurs, we have this competitive nature, right? So get the competitive nature inside of you to really take control of your health and your mindset. And it's like, hell no, I'm going to come back and make up this other 50%. And sometimes we have to do that through supplementation. Mm-hmm. Vitamin D got a huge observance, I would say, through COVID. Are you vitamin D deficient? And I would say B for sleep is just as important. People don't think of how B vitamins affect their sleep. So we have to look at the whole big perspective. And sometimes jumpstart it. So I use the car as the analogy a lot. Look under the hood. What requires jumper cables to jumpstart those body processes? But we also need to pay attention to the check engine lights that are on in our body. Like if you were driving your car and your check engine light came on, you would never put masking tape over that check engine light. So I'm just going to keep on driving.
We'll just take our chances. I'm a pilot, so when I see anything wrong with an engine or a check engine light, I'm like, yeah, this is a real problem right now.
Right now.
Must address. Can't just pull over to the side of the road. Well, I feel the need to say that there's nothing inherently wrong with Big Macs or Panera bread bowls with soup in them. But but all kidding aside, there is no right thing or wrong thing to eat, right?
Right.
It's all about how you balance the rest of your diet and
Yes.
and the rest of your stress levels. And I think I'm probably doing pretty poorly at all of that. So we'll have to chat after this podcast. Yeah, I'm the definition of a stressed out, overweight entrepreneur who, can't, who looks at his phone immediately when he gets up in the morning.
Yes.
Well, and the fact is, as an entrepreneur, just like this ease of, I can actually go to someone who is that subject matter expert, a professional that's doing the research, understanding kind of like what's coming down the line, and being able to, and mental health is the same way. It's so important to find a provider that really promotes an individualized plan of care that can guide you, just like the instructor at the gym, hand off to people that know the topic, and allow yourself that space of some time that you wouldn't otherwise have. You don't need to feel stuck. Like, there is guidance in reaching out and asking for help.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know this has been enlightening for me. I hope it has been for others as well. So everybody should go check you out on ThriveWell. I'm sorry.
ThriveWell Solutions.
ThriveWell Solutions. I can't speak today either. Everybody should go check you out on thrivewellsolutions.com. Thank you so much. Thanks again for being here. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like what you heard and you have suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at emotionalrunway@gmail.com, and make sure to share, like, subscribe, tell all your friends. Thank you again to both of you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Matt.